systematically against us over the last 2 years. I was in court even last Friday, just Friday past, accused of coming to Hyde Park, trying to speak on the 27th of December 2020. So these are two themes we're going to cover. So the background, just a few anecdotal stories about people at Speaker's Corner. I was here still when Lord Soper used to speak, as a friend over here, well, he used to speak over here. And he had a tremendous oratorical style. He was almost like Shakespearean in his language. He had enormous vocabulary, an enormous ability to...
Did pseudo-atheist Steve tell you not to...
Suddenly, you know, it's almost like moments of epiphany. When someone's speaking, they say something, and it suddenly holds the whole crowd. And there was a time here, I think it was his 90th birthday, where he came and spoke here. And there were literally 500 or 600 people gathered in this part of the park listening to him give his oration. And I just posted a few days ago, you can find it on YouTube. There's a video from the 1950s, I think it is, or late 40s, of Lord Soper standing here and speaking. And again, it was that atmosphere that he was able to hold a crowd. During the war, famously, there was a guy called Leslie Jones who used to sell pamphlets here about Speaker's Corner, the underpass down there. And he wrote one about Lord Soper and Speaker's Corner. And in there he said, there was one moment in 1940, I think it was 40, during the Blitz, and Lord Soper was speaking over there. A bomb was heard, so he said, "Hold on a minute." The crowd held. "I shall carry on speaking." So he carried on speaking right throughout the Blitz, and he started speaking in 1926 at Tower Hill. And then came to Speaker's Corner in 1940, first of all, and spoke from that time up until his death. I think it was 1998, if I remember right. I attended the funeral in his Methodist church. Now, there were other characters. One character I should mention immediately is a man who's just published a magnificent book on Ladbroke Grove and Notting Hill. And his name is Ishmael Blagrove. He spoke here for 30 years and more at Speaker's Corner. He's retired now from speaking. In fact, he's retired from all these type of activities. But he had a meeting in the Tabernacles in Notting Hill a few days ago. And there were hundreds and hundreds of people at this meeting from the entire community. The organisers of the Notting Hill Carnival. People who fought against the repression of people in the, what I think it was called, Mangroves 9 or whatever it was. But the squatters movement people, including people like Piers Corbyn involved in that. Tony Allen and the countercultural movement, who also was a regular speaker for decades here and was the founder of modern comedy in Britain. And and Ishmael had association with the entire black community in London and to a large degree internationally. There was a guy I didn't even know about called Michael X. There was a guy called Roy Saw who used to speak, a tremendous speaker. He would hold a crowd again, be able to gather them, hold them. And these at Speaker's Corner are random crowds, passing people going through Hyde Park, who if you can capture and hold the audience and bring the audience in, illustrate the way in which oratory works in real life. And that occasionally I've been able to do it, and you can, once you do it and you're motivated around the subject matter, you don't only have to do it at Speaker's Corner, you can do it in Leicester Square, on Trafalgar Square, anywhere where there's an open space. You can stand up, and if you appear to be moved in what you're saying, committed to what you're saying, and you're not purely mad, you will be able to gather a crowd. And don't forget, people talk about religious nutcases. Lord Soper was moved, as he believed, by the Spirit of God and the Spirit of Jesus. That's what motivated him. He was fanatical about this. That's what he spent his life promoting. And he believed that actually social justice and struggles to improve the rights of the people were an expression of the will of God. And he was an agent in that respect, temporarily on earth, fighting for those ideals.
He was a socialist.
And he believed that Jesus, I remember hearing once, and there was a Ford workers' strike. And he started his meeting, or someone said, what about the strikers? And he goes, I believe the Ford workers are serving the purpose of Jesus, or something similar to that he was saying. Now, there was another guy mentioned in Ishmael's book, Maxwell. He's still alive, I see him sometimes around. But Maxwell was a huge, I was reading this book this morning, about Frontline by Ishmael Blake. No, Maxwell, you know, black rights, always like being mouthy to people. Yeah, he knew everybody. He knew the Beatles, he knew Jimi Hendrix, all this. He was a music promoter. And he promoted black music within Britain. Played a big role in doing so. Marcus Garvey was a speaker in London, the black rights activist, the Return to Africa movement. There was the Indian Workers Association. There have always, when Lenin came to Speaker's Corner in 1902 and 3, he set out to learn English by watching the speakers speak. He was particularly enamored by an Irish speaker who he would watch and try to study. He knew English in written form and writing, but he couldn't speak it. And he learned at Speaker's Corner, but he was also keen on the religious speakers. And he would go from church to church and watch the church speakers speak and the preachers speak, and the people heckle the preachers, which is a tradition that of course exists, as you've seen at Speaker's Corner today. It still exists. I disagree with those who think that this is some threat. When I first came to Speaker's Corner, there were a group of people, a very vociferous group in the associated around the Monday Club, which was a Conservative Party sort of faction, and they trained themselves up at Speaker's Corner to heckle people. And initially I thought they're coming for me, attacking me. And after a few months I learned you just got to deal with it. And the way to deal with it is you take what they're giving, you know what they're coming with. You learn their lines and you repeat them back. And people started there, first of all they used to say to me, are you a double act? Like me and Toad, there was a guy called Toad, you know. Oh, yes. Are you a double act, they said to me, or Matthew Palmer, you know. And they say, you're a double act. And you had to like bite the bullet, tolerate these people being there. They hated you, you hated them, but somehow as long as you held the thing together, you could still get your ideas across, still get your views across, still get your message across, and come back and feel confident the next week as well.
And the Socialist
Party of Great Britain had a guy called Harry, who used to speak here, and he was in Moscow in 1921 and saw Lenin and Trotsky at the, I think it was the Communist International Congress. He was in the Youth League then, I believe it was. And then he joined this Socialist Party of Great Britain, who did didactic work. He was a tremendous didactic speaker on the basic principles of philosophy and economics of Marxism. Now, you don't have to like what someone says, but Speaker's Corner, as Leslie Jones used to say, is the university of the people. Yes. And it allowed people to come to Speaker's Corner who have no knowledge, people who we used to call them tramps, now they call them homeless. Tramps used to come up here and they would stand next to multi-millionaires and argue about communism or Christianity or Islam. And so that was the tradition which I've experienced over the decades at Speaker's Corner. Unfortunately for me, I was involved in a couple of Marxist groups. They all seemed to kick me out. And now they condemn me as a right-winger. So I'm a little bit weary about the labels people have used. Because over the last couple of years, people have accused me, I'm in association with Wilsey. I'm in association with the right wing, and so on. Why? Because we were opposing the single greatest act of international tyranny in history. The imposition of lockdowns and coronavirus dictatorships across the entire world on a lockstep basis, which appeared to us here in Hyde Park as the attempts by police and the de facto reality of the police closing down Hyde Park on and off for 2 years and arresting those of us. There were times when we just walked into the park and people were arrested just for walking into the park. And it wasn't anybody walking to the park, it was anybody entering the park who was a known face at Speaker's Corner. And the reason we were able to defeat them was because at the end of 3 anti-lockdown protests, we gathered here at Hyde Park. We agitated for people to defend Hyde Park. One occasion, the police were forced out in this direction. Another occasion, the police in open fields, just like in the 1850s, they had lined up about 150 police, making charges at us with their batons flying,
And we laughed.
grabbing small women, in particular small women, forcing them to the floor, handcuffing them, dragging them away, and we pushed them back out of the park on that occasion. The final